It's never the wrong time for a little bit of joy and gratitude. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Today, I'm going to do a book tag. This is the BookTube Community Joy and Gratitude book tag. This was created by Pat from Book Chat with Pat, and she created this in celebration of reaching 2,000 subscribers on her channel. And when she first released her video, I had a little bit of conversation with her in her comment section, and I really think this is a wonderful, wonderful tag for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think Pat is a wonderful person, and right around the same time she created this tag, I created my own tag, my life and genre tag, and she was the first one to make a video of her version of that. She did it, I think, one day after I created the tag, because she really is invested in the BookTube community. So if you haven't checked out her channel, she's a retired educator, and her videos are always filled with information and passion and love for reading and love for sharing reading and literature. So I highly recommend you check out her channel. I'm going to leave a link to her original video down in my description. When she created this book tag, one of the reasons it really spoke to me is I think gratitude is an incredibly powerful practice. In Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism, we have a practice of rejoicing. And we say rejoicing is one of the most powerful practices you can do. And what rejoicing is finding joy in virtue, in your own virtuous actions and the virtuous actions of others. Rejoicing isn't finding joy when things go wrong or when things go poorly for people. So the whole idea of like Schadenfreude, which is very popular these days, is completely antithetical to the Buddhist idea of living a meaningful life. But joy in virtue is a really, really powerful practice, because what you're doing is you create the habit of whenever anything virtuous happens, either you engage in something virtuous or someone else does, that instills in you a sense of happiness and joy. So by creating that habit, you're creating a positive feedback loop. And I think gratitude and joy are like, gratitude and rejoicing are like two sides of the same coin. So it's the same practice. When you develop gratitude and you actively work at having a mind of gratitude, then it becomes easier and easier. And as a result, you find much more contentment and satisfaction and just happiness in your life. So I think gratitude is a really wonderful practice. And I think having a book tag centered around it is a great idea. So I'm very grateful to Pat for designing this book tag. At the time when I saw her original video, I did think of making my own video, but I didn't quite have the oomph to do it. And then Alex from Alexander Bridge tagged me in his video, and so that gave me the extra inspiration I needed. So his video is also going to be linked down in the description. Thanks to the two of them, this is my version of that tag. So the tag is quite simple. It has 7 prompts, plus the 8th one being to tag others, and they're divided into a few categories. The first category is joy. Let's be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom. Marcel Proust. Question 1. Name an author whose books bring you joy, or discuss a specific book that made you feel joyful. And for me, I have to say Becky Chambers and the Monk and Robot duology. That's the first thing that came to mind when I saw this question. So the Monk and Robot duology is a psalm for the wild-built and a prayer for the crown-shy. And when I read those, that was my first introduction to the concept of solar punk as a genre, right? So taking steampunk and then taking a lot of the steampunk elements, including the somewhat dystopian future, maybe post-apocalyptic future, and then twisting it to have optimism as one of the driving characteristics of that life, of that world. That is what you see in the Monk and Robot books and in all of Becky Chambers' writing. And it's hard to read them and just not feel joy, not feel happy. I've only read one other book by Becky Chambers, to be taught if fortunate, but I know there are the 4 books in the Wayfarer series that I am looking forward to reading when I have a chance. And whenever I think back on the Monk and Robot duology, it just makes me happy. As soon as I read them, I bought copies for people in my life, because I just think they're really, really wonderful books that have stakes and they have a journey, they have character arcs, and there is tension there. It's not like everything is puppies and roses, but even that tension, even those stakes that exist, they ask questions about what it means to be in the world and how you want to be in a community and how you want to serve others with your presence, with your knowledge, with your partnership, with your companionship, and how you want to be curious but hopeful and optimistic at the same time. Everything I've read by Becky Chambers has just made me feel a whole lot of joy. So that's why she is the answer to that first question. Next, number 2, discuss something about BookTube that you find joyful. So this is going to sound like a sappy answer, but anyone who spends time on BookTube will know there are a couple different faces of BookTube. And there are some people who, for them, it is part of their livelihood. And so the way they create videos and the content they create and how they aim at getting maximum views and really tweaking the algorithm is usually noticeable. And that doesn't mean they don't have good content. I love a lot of that content, their reviews, their ideas, their opinions. I watch a lot of videos from people who clearly this is part of their livelihood. And so their content is curated with that in mind, and they still have great content. I love that. But a lot of booktubers, I'd say most booktubers aren't like that. Most booktubers have much smaller audiences. They aren't making any money off this, or if they are, it's very little. And they're doing it because they love reading and they love talking about books and they love talking about literature and how reading affects their lives. And just to see other people follow a passion so strongly that they're willing to put themselves on camera and share it with the world is like really meaningful to me, especially, and this maybe sound a little ageist, but especially people that are, I'd say, over 35, over 40. And the reason for that is my generation and above, so I'm 40, so my generation and above, we aren't as accustomed to putting ourselves out on the internet for everyone to see and not thinking about the ramifications of it. Do you know what I mean? Young people who grew up with, computers in their pockets, their idea of putting themselves on the internet and the way they approach private public life is different than the older generations. So to see someone who it takes motivation for them to put themselves on camera, but they care so much about reading, about literature, about having community, that they put themselves on camera and share a part of themselves, that is really meaningful to me. So to see people be willing to share their passion, to put themselves out on a limb and maybe look foolish in the process, but do it anyway because they care so much about reading and about literature and about sharing and about community, that is really joyful to me. So just to see that exercise. So that, I think BookTube itself and seeing the creators who are doing it for the love of books and doing it for the love of reading, and for that reason alone, that's really motivating to me, and that's what I find joyful. So the next category is friendship. Kindred spirits are not so scarce as I used to think. It's splendid to find out there are so many of them in the world. L.M. Montgomery, Anne of Green Gables. Question 3. Discuss a book that focuses primarily on friendship. And so for me, I would say my pick for this is going to be It by Stephen King. And, a lot of people look at It and they think of it about Pennywise, the dancing clown, right? This murderous celestial being or cosmic being who terrorizes a town and, eats people. But that's not what It is about. It is about the Losers Club. It is about these 5 kids who face incredible odds, have their own personal traumas in their life with overbearing parents or abusive parents or neglectful parents. They have their own difficulties with bullies in class and other situations, and yet they find a camaraderie that through that allows them to face the most difficult odds in the world and defeat something that has been plaguing their town for centuries. So it really is all about friendship. And if you look in that book, it's very rare that Pennywise attacks the kids when they are together. Pennywise goes after the children when they're apart, when their friendship bonds have dissolved. That's when Pennywise is most powerful, right? When they are together in a group, they go after Pennywise, and he's always acting in defense at that point. So friendship is the heart of that story, and when they lose friendship, that's when they get lost. When they lose friendship, that is when things fall apart. And so for me, the real heart of It is about these 5 kids and about what it means to create community and to have a found family that is always going to have your back no matter what. I just think the friendship on display in that book is really, really wonderful. It's the highlight of that book for me. There are all these other, horrific trappings that go around it, but it's the friendship that shines through. So if I wanted to pick one book that emphasized and epitomized friendship, it would be It by Stephen King. Then the next category is laughter. There's nothing like deep breaths after laughing that hard. Nothing in the world like a sore stomach for the right reasons. Stephen Chbosky, Perks of Being a Wallflower. Question 4. Discuss an author or a specific book that makes you laugh. So I'd say the most recent book that I actually laughed out loud while I was reading was Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the 4th book in his Southern Reach series, no longer a trilogy. And the last section of that book is written from this manic point of view perspective that is so wild and out there that I literally had to put the book down sometimes to ask if I was really reading what I thought I was reading. Just the energy that was brought to that last section really threw me for a loop and made me literally stop reading over and over again to check that I wasn't going crazy. So that made me laugh out loud. But in general, those books aren't that funny. So that's like an exception. I don't really read books that are just humor books or that's their main focus. I tend to like books that have humor incorporated into whatever other genre I'm reading, though I do read some satire. And so if I were to actually choose an author, I would say Kurt Vonnegut is an author that continually and repeatedly makes me laugh. If I had to choose one book, I'd probably say Breakfast of Champions, though I don't think you can go wrong with any Kurt Vonnegut novel. It's also just so inspiring to see someone who went through World War II, went through, the bombing of Dresden, all the things he did, and yet came out of it on the other side, where he was cynical and he was skeptical of institutions and of power and of capitalism, yet he was still hopeful and optimistic and playful. And his satire has all of those elements that even when he is picking at something, he's doing it with an optimistic or a potentially optimistic outlook, even if it's a very dark kind of satire. Kurt Vonnegut was a genius author, and I find a lot of laughter from reading his books. Next is community. We cannot live only for ourselves. 1,000 fibers connect us with our fellow men. Herman Melville. So question 5. Discuss a book where the idea of community is important. So for this one, I would choose Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. This is his 3rd novel, and it came out earlier this year. And this is an incredible, incredible novel. It is technically a YA novel, but it's again one of those novels, especially in the horror field, where the idea of YA and adult is kind of blurred because it's very graphic and it covers some very adult themes. So the main character in the story is a young trans boy who's 16, I think, and he's also autistic. And he is in a community where he is fighting for workers' rights. So there's a socialist message that is a very strong undercurrent of the book. And so not only is he fighting to learn who he is and be accepted as he is, the arc of the story is that the small town he lives in, there is basically a sheriff whose family has, through many generations, been in charge of the town and been the de facto leader of the town. They're the wealthiest family in town, and they boss everyone around. And everyone else comes from miners' families for the most part. And there was a large miner rebellion, I think 2 generations back, where the main character's great grandfather, I think, or ancestor, I'm not quite sure how far away removed, was like the lead picketer and led this miners' rebellion. And so the whole story is looking at personal growth, but it is doing it in the lens of community solidarity and what it means to be part of a community of working class people and how power should exist in the hands of the workers and not in the hands of the corporate elite who are trying to profit off of others' labor. So it is about class solidarity and community, and that is the heart of that story. Though it is a really, really wonderful kind of tender story as well about identity and about learning who you are and about learning your place in the world. So Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White, I think, is an incredible, incredible book that is heavily focused on the idea of community. The next question, discuss a communal reading experience that you've had. And I'll be honest, I have not had any communal reading experiences, I think, since college. I'm very much a private reader. I have taken part in a number of reading events, but those are focused on themes, right? Not on specific books. However, this month I have 2 buddy reads lined up. So I'm breaking my habit of being such a solo reader. Later this month, I have a buddy read with Alex from Alex Unabridged, and we're going to read The City of Last Chances, which is a novel by Adrian Chbosky. It is the first in his Tyrant Philosophers series, so it's fantasy books by him, not sci-fi. And I haven't read any of his books yet, even though I want to. And Alex has, become quite enamored with some of his sci-fi books. So that is a project we're both excited for. And then the other buddy read I have lined up this month is with Carl from Please Read Your Book. And we are going to read Stoner by John Williams. And I think we might even make a video at the end to see how it goes. He had tried reading it before and he kind of stopped around the 4th chapter or so because it wasn't working for him. And I haven't read it yet, but I've heard a lot about it. And so that's another buddy read we have lined up. We want to see how it works for the 2 of us. So I have 2 buddy reads lined up this month alone, but I've never had any before. So that's part of the joy of BookTube for me, is that it has encouraged me to do things like that. So the only communal reading experiences I can talk about are future ones that have not happened yet, but I'm looking forward to. Then the next section, and the last real question, is on gratitude. I can no other answer make but thanks and thanks. William Shakespeare, Twelfth Night. 7. Name a book in which a character demonstrates real gratitude, or name a book that left you feeling a sense of gratitude. And so for this, I think I would have to choose Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. And this is such a strange story that from the outside, it looks like it would never work. It follows 3 main characters, 3 women. And the first is a violinist who sold her soul to the devil or made some sort of Faustian bargain to be the best in her field. And now she is trying to get her soul back. And the deal is she has to give the devil 7 more souls of violin prodigies in order to get her soul back. And she's already given him 6. And so she's looking for that one last soul that will buy her freedom. And at the same time, she meets a young woman who is a young trans woman who's a runaway, who also happens to be a violin prodigy. And so she takes her under her wing with the intention that this will be her final soul, that she'll get out of her bargain. And then at the same time, the third character is a woman who is a single mother. I think she has 4 or 5 kids, and she runs a donut and coffee shop. But you find out she's not human. She's an alien. And she's not just an alien, she's an interstellar refugee. And our first main character goes to her coffee shop and starts, having feelings for her. And so there begins this like romance between them. The story circles around these 3 characters and how they relate to each other and how they find community together and how they push against each other and how they figure out what is important in their lives and what is it that makes their lives meaningful. And is it what they thought? Or is it something else, something bigger, something stronger by being together and by being with other people? And the story is just so intimate feeling and so wonderful. And it sounds ludicrous, right? It sounds like a hat on top of a hat on top of a hat. You have Faustian bargains, you have random musical prodigies, and you have aliens who are interstellar refugees. Like, why do those 3 need to come together? It seems like it would be just absurd premise, but it works so well. Like, the book brings you on this roller coaster ride of emotions. And at least when I finished it, the idea of gratitude, the idea of really recognizing what I have in my life that's meaningful and how I can seek out other things to keep my life meaningful was at the top of my mind. And so I think that is the perfect book to kind of embody the idea of gratitude and of seeking out a life of contentment through being in relation with the world around you and with others around you and realizing what your priorities are and what it is to lead a meaningful life. What do you need in order for that to happen? And so those are all the questions. The last prompt is to tag others in order to spread a sense of joy and gratitude. But, Pat tagged, every booktuber that exists. And so I'm not sure there's anyone else I could tag that hasn't been tagged already. If you're watching this video and the tag interests you, then by all means you are tagged. I'd love to see what your response might be. I think that's all I have for today though. So thank you so much for spending some time with me. I appreciate you. Be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.